Hello and welcome to this episode of On the Neutral Ground. And thanks for tuning in.
And check us out on all social media platforms at On the NG Show, as well as YouTube and Apple Podcast. Welcome to today's episode of On the Neutral Ground. I'm Jason Wagensback, and we're excited to have two wonderful Louisiana filmmakers as guests today.
And I'm Victoria Green. It's going to be a great show. We have Daneeta Loretta Jackson as well as Lizzie Guitreau. And I'm sure I mispronounced her name. She's going to correct us.
No, you got it.
I got it.
Nailed it.
Well, these women I've known for a long time. They are women filmmakers. They're directors. They're producers. And they're going to give you so much information that you'll be busting out all over, but about directing, about producing, about fundraising. And this is great. We ready to go?
Excited
Let's
to do it.
Well, first, we want to know about your journey. How did you get started? Tell us a little bit about you. And Lizzie, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I'm Lizzie Guitreau. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, but I've been here in New Orleans for almost 10 years now. I went to school at University of New Orleans, and that's kind of where I got my start. I was in the film program, met basically all my filmmaker friends there, and they're the people I've made my first feature with and my second feature with, and you get the picture. We do a lot of narrative work, but we recently also released a documentary feature, so I'm all over the place, and I focus more in the producing realm and the getting things done realm. So that's me.
Cool. Thank you.
Daneeta?
My name is Daneeta Loretta Jackson. I'm from Big Branch, Louisiana, and I had a whole other career before I became a director. I had a career as a writer. I wrote features in Tokyo, and then I was there for quite some time, and then I moved to London to go to the London Film School. And that's where I really agree with you, Lizzie. The people that you go to film school with are the people that you sort of end up working with, and to this day, I still work with some of my London Film School friends. I moved back here in 2008 to make Louisiana stories. I work mostly in hybrid, so I've done shorts, I've done features, I did a big show at the CAC, which included a feature-length film. And the hybrid that I'm speaking of is that it's both documentary and fiction, blur the line between documentary and fiction.
Very interesting. You wrote features in Japan?
No, not feature scripts, features for magazines.
Oh.
And yeah.
I was like, that would have been really interesting, and still is, but, very curious about that. And then, Lizzie, on your side, you focus more on producing. Talk about what type of producing that you actually focus on, because there's creative, there's executive, there's physical.
Well, we have a pretty small team. There's about 4 producers in our little squad of filmmakers. My role tends to be more, producing so, anamorphic.
Yes.
I kind of dabble in all of it. I definitely do creative producing, which is more of building the concept and building the script and giving notes on edits, stuff like that. But I also have done funding for our first feature. I handle a lot of the contracting with our lawyers and kind of making that gap between the creative and the contract a little bit easier. My main goal in my head is just to keep everyone on the same page and keep everyone happy and satisfied and informed. So for me, that just means lots of verbal communication and lots of checking in with people. I like balancing personalities. That's a big part of producing. Because there's all sorts of people, all sorts of people just in different roles, and non-filmmakers too that you have to work with and kind of bring them into this is how films go. So I find that that's been my job mainly over the last few years and the last 2 features we've released. So yeah.
Sounds like you're marshaling all resources, it sounds like. So
I'm a juggler.
You're a jack of all trades, if you will. Yeah.
And
or a Jill of all trades.
A Jill of all trades.
And producers is so important because you want your creators, your directors, to be able to create and not focus on the business end.
Yeah.
So producers have very important roles, as do directors. Because you direct most of the films, correct?
Yeah, I co-direct every film. Every film that I've ever made, I've co-directed with my partner, Patrick Jackson. Let me say every film that I've made outside of film school. I co-directed with my partner, Patrick Jackson, who is also my husband. And we also run a small production company called Electric Zoo Films. And
Say that again,
Electric Zoo Films.
Electric
It's
Zoo
with
Films.
K's, ELEKTRIKZOO.com. So in my day job, I produce and direct commercial content for local companies, for national companies, for international companies. So I'm directing like constantly, but I'm also doing the producing, which is kind of an interesting, like you're saying, it's like different headspaces for the two things. So it's almost like I have to like put my director in a box when I'm producing. I have to put my producer in a box when I'm directing.
I found that very difficult during Forgotten Bayou because I was the director and I was the producer, and it is very hard to put it in a box. So how do you juggle that?
Yeah.
Very, very cautiously.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really about setting the to-do list. It's just so silly, but it's about like the calendar and the to-do list. So I'm going to spend an hour today working on X project as the producer, and I'm going to do all of the to-do things in the list that I've already made. I'm going to give myself 2 hours today to work as a director with my directing partner, Patrick. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about this. We're going to actually direct, co-edit together or whatever. So it really is all about the calendar, all about the to-do list, and all about managing time. And when I say managing time as well, I think just being an older filmmaker, what I've learned is that you also have to manage in or actually manage in your exercise and your self-care. Because if you don't, then you burn out like that. I think I kind of went off on a tangent. Sorry, y'all.
No, you did. It's great. It's very pertinent from everything that you just stated.
Yeah.
It actually hits home. And Lizzie, tell us how you came up as a producer. You seem to be a little bit more of a rising star around here. I've been watching a lot of the great stuff you've been doing. And so how did you get started? I know you went to film school and you met a group, but really what kind of took you off into the direction of where you are now? Was it one project? Was it a certain group of people that you met that said, hey, we're going to go out and do this, and it kind of grew from there?
Yeah, I think it was like just always in me. Like the moment I started film school, I went into film school with more of like a writer's hat on because that's what my background prior had been. I wrote a lot, but basically as soon as I stepped foot in film school and had all these opportunities to make short films, like I probably worked on 100 short films in film school because there's so many projects and all for free, like that was the beauty of film school for me, is that you find your creative core and people that are willing to work. And like I've always been one with like an itch to do something, so I kind of just put myself in that world, and I naturally gravitated towards producing in the end because it kind of matches like I said, I like to bring people together. I like people on the same page. I love making budgets. I'm a freak like that. And and what really, after I graduated, really similar to you, Daneeta, I met a really good friend, Bruno Doria, who invited me to be a part of his production company, Worklight Pictures, that we run.
DP, Bruno, right?
DP, yeah. He's a DP, also a director, also an editor, and a colorist, and we both wear a lot of hats. But I started working with him in that space, and we do something similar to you, it sounds like, where we do commercials to kind of like put food on the table, but we've now started to transition into only feature films, which is basically the goal, is to in-house develop and release our own features, with 2 on the table now. So you asked how I got started. I mean, I kind of like fell into it. Actually, I have this really cool story. Like I have this one very strange memory.
We like really cool stories.
It was actually my mom who was like, you know what? You should be a filmmaker, because we were watching the second DVD of Moulin Rouge, which, full disclosure, is my favorite movie. I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for that, but I don't know why. It just hits all the points for me.
I love musicals too. Hey.
I love musicals.
My wife's a massive musicals fan.
They're just so extravagant, especially that particular film. So well directed in my mind. But
Before you go on your tangent, okay. I want to make sure that everybody knows I have a musical about New Orleans that I've been wanting to make for a decade now.
Really?
I want to do an across the universe, but with New Orleans music and the history of jazz. Anyway, I
feel that.
Don't take my idea. Go ahead.
Don't tell anybody. Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a similar bucket list film
cool, we'll have to
like
talk.
that. Yeah, we'll talk. But yeah, so I'm watching the second DVD for like the 100th time of this movie that I love. And my mom turns to me and she goes, you know, you could go to film school. You're always like watching the special features, the behind the scenes. You're always like looking up how much movies cost and like who's in them. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then she was like, well, there's this film school right down the road at UNO. Why don't you apply? And lo and behold, it was kind of my mom who like introduced the idea of a creative career to me, because at first I was going to go into like the medical field. So thanks, Mom.
Thanks,
it really
Mom.
worked out well. And
Absolutely.
she supported me, and my dad as well have supported me through all of this. So,
That's great.
yeah.
And you've
that's how
done
I got
good.
started.
You've done very well with it.
I had fun.
Daneeta, with the rise of the amount of content that we're seeing nowadays, and some of the stories that I see that you're resonating to, and correct me if I'm wrong, explain to me a bit of the, how did you call it? You called it transitional
Hybrid.
media? Hybrid media, sorry. Explain a bit more about hybrid media to
And I
us.
think you're also talking about the transmedia
Yes.
Right.
storytelling. There's always been a transmedia element to our films. And when I say transmedia, I mean that we tell stories across different platforms. So you may get a different part of the story from a blog, or you may get a different part of the story from a photo essay, or you may get a different part of the story from a podcast, or an exhibition at the CAC. So there's always been a transmedia element to our storytelling. Now, we're also hybrid filmmakers, which means that we blur the line between fiction and documentary. So right now I'm working on a film. I'm in production for a film called Homeland Wetland. I'm directing it. And we have the consulting producer of Maggie Hadley West, and we have a great animator on board, and that is sort of a history of the relationship between humans and the Louisiana homeland wetland, the abusive history. And then we extrapolate into the future. That's where we get hybrid, because that's the fictional element of it. And then attached to that film will be a transmedia component that will allow people to do direct actions, such as give money or sign up for an organization or write their senators. So that's one of the ideas that we have for the transmedia, but it's like very early days. And actually this morning I just got great news, which is like there's an investor that was interested in our filmmaking, but the organization that he has is not investing in filmmaking, but they are investing in technology. And so he's very interested in the transmedia part of this. And this is the first time we're potentially going to get funding for transmedia stuff. Before, we've only gotten funding for the films, for the films itself. So anyway, that's
Your
a
short
little bit.
film, Nicabob.
Yeah.
And Nicabob was the Audience Choice Award at the film festival in 2017 at New Orleans Film Festival. Great. It was my favorite film of the block. It was one of my favorite films of the entire festival.
Oh, thanks.
Is that considered, crossing the lines? And talk a little bit about Nicabob, because
Yeah.
it was an amazing
Yeah, that's
film.
a hybrid. That's definitely a hybrid. So what we did with that film is Nick, that plays the main character, Nicabob, is my nephew, and he has he's on the spectrum. And
It was shot down the street from here, wasn't it?
yes,
This is in
yeah.
St. Bernard
A lot of
Parish.
our work is shot in St. Bernard Parish, because a lot of our work revolves around my family members and stories that are in my extended family. And my family, I'm not from Chalmette, but some of my family members are from Chalmette. So anyway, Nick, the real Nick, had started a YouTube channel, and he wanted to become a YouTube star, but because of his special personality, he was horribly bullied, and he kept having to shut down, and he kept starting new YouTube channels because he's obsessive compulsive as well. And so anyway, we took that story and we fictionalized that story, and we had Nick play a fictionalized version of himself in that story, and then we flipped the ending. So it's fiction, so we can flip the ending. Instead of the horrible ending that we were heading towards, which could have been really horrible, we flipped it to a really beautiful ending. And if you want it, you can see it on our Vimeo channel. And it won the Audience Choice Award, and it got a Vimeo staff pick. And it was screened all over the world. So in some sense, that's been our most successful hybrid, but we've been doing hybrid since the beginning. So yeah.
Thank you for telling those kind of stories too, because they absolutely need to be heard. And I mean, I was discussing with my wife recently with When They See Us, and it's like I didn't know much about the City Park 5.
Oh,
in New York.
the way they see us.
When They See Us.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so I was so emotional watching that, and I didn't know anything about it, but it's bringing those types of things to light, those stories and those challenges that we have in society to the forefront. People need to understand what's actually going on. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
That type of work.
Thank you, Nick.
But I could go off on that because I love talking about that. I really want to know about filmmaking in general, and I want to know, what are some of your challenges today? Let's go over to Lizzie. Like, as a filmmaker, you're on your second feature right now, what is the end goal, I think? And then let's work our way back from there. Like, are you looking to be a successful filmmaker and make a career out of this, and this is what you hope to do? And what do you see now as your challenge to getting to that goal?
Right. The challenges I have with filmmaking are probably not the typical challenges, but you kind of hinted at them earlier, Daneeta. For me, filmmaking, especially when you're in like a head role, like a producer or a director, something like that, it really consumes your life. Like, it can eat up so many hours. Like, just to kind of give you a rough timeline, our first film that our team made called Easy Does It, which will be released later this year, the script was born from a short that was made in like 2013. We had a feature script by 2014, but we didn't receive funding till 2016, and now it's 2019 and we're still making it. First feature. And first features do tend to take longer, and this feature in particular had a lot of challenges that a lot of first features don't in terms of the script elements, but like, that's a lot of time, y'all. Like, I came onto that project in like 2014, and this is year 5. And when you're doing multiple films too, you're juggling. And then when you're also having to like do other things to make yourself money, that's a whole nother thing to juggle. Plus there's I need to be sane and I need to be taking care of myself and enjoying my life. So I think the biggest thing I've learned in the last year is how to balance all of those things. And for me, like, as a filmmaker, I want to move forward like with a good attitude. I don't want to get sucked into any sort of bad business mentality that the film industry tends to have, privy for. Like, it's kind of a stereotype, right? Like, filmmaking's got a lot of big bad producers in it and money hungry people and stuff like that. So avoiding all of that while also avoiding the burnout and creating content that resonates with what I would want to see. So in general, our company doesn't do a whole lot of branding, but what we've realized over the last few years, looking back on our shorts that we're most proud of and looking back on these features, is that we try to tell stories that are just full of positivity and hope. And like you're saying, like a story that just needs to be told and will bring like good energy to an audience, because there's we live in a heavy world. We always have, and we always will, but it kind of weighs on you, especially we have so much exposure to things now. We can see all these problems where maybe 50 years ago before the internet we couldn't see. And, and it's good that we're able to be aware, but it also weighs heavy on the soul. So we try to bring things that will just lighten audiences, remind them that, like, hey, like, we live in a beautiful world too. There are good people in it. There are good experiences to be had. So for me, it's like more of a personal balance of like just being happy, finding happiness in an industry that really, it grinds you hard, but in, a lot of rewarding ways you can make things. Like, not a lot of people get to make stuff as a job.
The steps that you're taking right now, though, to hopefully accomplish the goal of making more of a career out of it so that financially you can have the things that you're working so hard to grab hold of. Are those hurdles in the way of, finding representation, or are the hurdles in trying to get into festivals to obviously gain notoriety? Do you see that still being the path? Because to me, as a filmmaker as well, I feel like the festival circuit is so saturated right now.
Right.
There's so much stuff out there. It's really tough to find, that little niche and get in there and find the right opportunity, if you will, to have people start to see where you're at, and then try to figure out your distribution method, because that's obviously another big, huge step of creating this career out of it. Are you seeing challenges with that right now yourself, or do you find it, are you finding success actually in the festival circuit to then meet the right network of people to hopefully move that forward?
We've been told no by basically every festival we've ever submitted any project to. And that's the reality of it. And
I have too, by the way, so you're not the only one. So.
Yeah, totally. And I think we need to talk about, we always as filmmakers are talking about our successes. Like, I like hearing about people's failures, because in the end, I learn more from those no's than I do from the yeses sometimes.
Yep, absolutely.
So I do think that there is a challenge in the like boots on the ground aspects of like getting your film into a festival is really difficult. A lot of things have to line up for each different type of film and each different type of festival even. And getting sales and distribution is so hard. And you also need like lots of connections and lots of, you know, like your film needs to come at the right time and you need to present it at the right time. It needs to look the right way. It needs to be marketed the right way. But what I do find like most exciting about independent filmmaking in general is that you can find ways, like, for example, with our documentary, having a really hard time getting into festivals. I'll be just super honest about that. And
I'm shocked.
so we have found alternative ways to just go ahead and release it ourselves. We're following a self-distribution path that makes sense for us and going on a little tour with the band to promote it. And for us, like, I was so dead set on, okay, we need to find a sales agent and then we need to like go to these certain festivals and line this up. And then when that wasn't happening, instead of like being like, oh no, we're stuck, this is the one way I gotta go. With indie filmmaking, you can go 15 other paths, you know, and in the end, I've learned way more doing that than I had like just stubbornly pursuing my first plan. You know what I mean? So I think that the hardest thing is not like the milestones you have to hit, the films and the sales agents and distribution. It's like how to think on your feet when your plan isn't unfolding how you thought it was. So that's what we're learning now is like, because there's also really new ways to distribute and to get your film in front of people that aren't film festivals and that aren't Instagram, and figuring out what those are and how to find like the audience that really cares.
Daneeta, what are some of your challenges as well?
I mean,
And-
everything that Lizzie said, definitely. And I think I love that idea of like not staying, you know, completely stubborn about your first plan. I mean, for us, I always try to find the path of least resistance. The biggest challenge, honestly, that I have is my age. Because I started filmmaking late in life, in my late 30s, and I've been doing this for 20 years, so that sort of gives you an idea. Just being able to have access to the same things that younger filmmakers have access to. And I've talked about this with some of my older filmmaker friends about this. One of my filmmaker friends couldn't get into a lab because she was older than the cutoff. The lab was 47, the cutoff was 47, and she was older than 47, and we thought that that was really not right. People start at different times in their careers. I think, and I think that as a female, as an older female, it's even more difficult because people won't even look at my business experience that I had before filmmaking, and yet a dude can have business experience before that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm starting to like get, but. So anyway, those are two. My age and my gender are two definite struggles, and then also funding for the type of films that we make. Like, I just get so annoyed. Like you said, Lizzie, like Homeland Wetland, we've been working on since 2013 as well. And, you know, we're just finishing production now, and it's all about funding and the cycle of funding. And sometimes I just get so annoyed and so tired of it that I'm like, you know what? We're just going to make this without funding, which is what a lot of our films are. And they, you know, perhaps lack the polish, but they still, you know, screen at big festivals, and they still win awards. So, but festivals, you know, it's all about who you know.
Yes.
Honestly, you have to make a relationship. Like, you can get in, like maybe, you know, like we had our film Locked was an environmental film, and we couldn't get it into, and nobody wanted to do it because it's like this small film about the small thing that's happening in this small place in New Orleans, right? So we started sending it to environmental festivals. So that was one way that it started getting screenings, and then we started doing public screenings, so that helped. You know, with Homeland Wetland, I'm not sure what our distribution strategy is going to be. I will reach out to every film festival that and I've been sending films to festivals since 2002. So I will reach out to every single one of those festivals and contact the programmer, because I've had a relationship with them since 2002. So every time we get into a festival, I cultivate a relationship with that programmer. And then sometimes they move to bigger festivals, and you email that programmer, hey, I've got a new film out, and they remember you.
That's great.
So that's like one way to get through it. But to get to that point,
Right.
you have to get. I just celebrated. I started counting when I started sending my writing off to submissions before I was a filmmaker, and I just hit 750 rejections. Woo!
Congrats.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Lizzie, thank you for talking about that, because I think you're right. A lot of people talk about the successes of filmmaking, and people who want to be filmmakers think, oh my gosh, I'm not getting that kind of success,
Right.
so my films suck and I'm really bad and I should just give up. No, it's like most filmmakers get 750 rejections by the time they become successful, and then there's this one lucky dude. There's this one lucky dude that hits it out of the ballpark and wins Sundance.
Yeah, I've
Anyway.
had the same, and I've talked about this in the past. Like, you've got to go through the trials and tribulations. You have to go through the no's to get to the yeses in everything that we do in life. Honestly, if you are building a career in anything, you are going to learn so much from the failures to get to that success point. And so you mentioned something that you nailed, which is networking. And we've said this on this podcast over and over and over again. Make sure you're talking to people that have had successes, people you look up to, people that you know that have resources that you don't generally have, and find ways of connecting and networking with them to obviously start taking those steps into the direction that you want to go in. So I apologize to interrupt you. But
No, this is how I met everybody. This is how I met you, Jason, through networking. And then I met Lizzie through networking, as well as Daneeta, and through Women in Film. I think networking is very important. When I finished my film, everybody said, oh, yeah, film festivals. I listened to an interview that I gave with a Baton Rouge television station in 2015. So what's next with your film? Oh, well, I'm sure we'll get into Sundance, and we'll be in Texas, and probably Tribeca, and really? But true, every no is closer to a yes. I did not get into one environmental film festival at all, and my film is an environmental film. So I think the failures make you stronger, and I really appreciate you commenting about that, the 750 rejections, and look outside the box. I'm doing the same thing you are. And I think a lot of us are in the film industry, you do look for alternatives, whether it's online screening on Vimeo, iTunes. You can do all of that yourself, but looking outside the box. But it's when we spoke with Stephen Estep and Mary Kornhauser last time, they talked about, you have to love this, right? Because if you don't listen to your heart and you listen to your head, you'd be told, don't do it. It's very difficult. So, that's what we have to keep in mind. I don't mean to interrupt you, Jason, but what I'm very impressed about both you, Daneeta, and you, Lizzie, is that you are making a living in this business that you love. How are you doing it? I mean, you alluded to it, but for someone out there that wants to be a filmmaker, maybe they don't know how to edit. Jason, a while back, I heard you say,
used to
learn
be
how
an
to
editor.
edit.
Oh, yeah.
And that stuck in my head. That's on my to-do list. But to that filmmaker out there that, well, gee, I just want to direct. Yeah. How do you make a living? What do you do to sustain and put food on your table while you're still creating content?
I think that's a really, really important thing to talk about, because it's one of those taboo subjects that you don't get to peek behind the curtain of, like, what is a filmmaker's life actually like? So
waiting tables and doing the
my
odd-end
first
jobs.
job was at a pizza place. Not my first job, but my first job that I got in film school. I was a student worker, and I worked at a pizza place, and I took side hustle gigs, like driving people places. And then after school, I worked for a network show that paid me like crap and worked me into the ground, but that was a way in. And then my first real job in film was joining Worklight, and what we do is about, in the very beginning, all of our work, maybe 90% of our work, was commercial work, which is working with local and national clients to make videos, to edit, to tech scout, whatever they need. But through that, I learned basically all the skills I have now, is how to manage clients and bad and good attitudes. But as the years go by, we can take a little bit less work and put a little bit more time into the creative. So we're slowly shifting that 90-10 commercial to maybe like 50-50, and one day it'll be 70-30. And so we do these kind of like paid projects to put food on the table. But I mean, to be honest, like I'm not rich. Like I'm broke, but I love my life and I spend my money wisely. I definitely put myself on a budget, and I'm sure we all do that. You know, I'm very frugal. I don't spend money all the time, you know, like it's just part of life, because in any job you probably are living on some sort of budget. And in filmmaking, I think it takes a long time, if ever, to make a lot of money. And you have to make certain kinds of films to do that, is what I'm learning. So you can't really start out film, I don't think, like wanting to make a lot of money, because like you'll probably burn out pretty quickly. You have to actually love what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's just my perspective, of course. And I'm very, very grateful that I no longer have to work at a pizza place, and that I basically cut out my side hustles, and now I can focus just on my filmmaking. That happened like maybe 2 years ago even. Like I had a second job up as I was filming that first feature, you know, and that was, 2016, and now.
You bring up a good point, though, about how to make money and who makes money, or the big money in the end. And, there is two different sides of filmmaking. There is, there's the commercialization, and where I'm looking at as a filmmaker, do I want to make a movie that I know is marketable and obviously make my investment back to my investors and hopefully make cash that I can put in my pocket and continue down this road. And then there's, what we'll call art projects or art pieces, where we're really looking to tell a story that we just are passionate about, that we want the world to see and understand. And we're, at the end of the day, either looking for grants or finding people who want to invest in the same vision that you have, that maybe not will commercialize off of that. And I feel like, in a way, you've got a lot of human interest pieces that don't necessarily culminate to the commercial market, but have they for you, and how has that worked out for you to be able to hopefully successfully make a career out of this in the time that you've been doing it?
Well, I mean, I feel like I am kind of making a career out of it in a way. Let me just back up a little bit. So part of how I earn my living, obviously, is through grants. And part of how I earn my living, grants for the passion projects. And part of how I earn my living is directing and producing commercial content. I had to work up to that commercial content, so I had to do a lot of stuff for free. Like when we graduated film school, our exit interview, they asked us, how many years can you work for free? That's another thing. I'm not rich. I'm not from a rich family, but 99% of the people I went to film school with are super rich because I went to London Film School. So how they did it is they just worked for their dad's friends and for a couple of years, and then, they got into it. So anyway, I had to do a lot of work for free. And when I was doing a lot of work for free, I figured out a way to completely slash my consumption to nothing. So that is the one thing that I would recommend to every single person, whether you're a filmmaker or not. You're considered a consumer by everyone, by the U.S. government, by companies, or whatever. So stop consuming, and you can live on less. So that's the first thing I did, and that really worked out, and I'm still doing that. Now I get a lot more money for what I do, but I'm still living the same way that I was living before, which means all that extra money gets to go into a place that then continues to earn me extra money. I'm not saying this is something that you can do right now. It's just a thing that I worked up to over like the 12 years after, having nothing. So anyway, and the part-time jobs are great. I love the part-time job. Sometimes I'll even do a part-time job now because it helps the creativity. Not only does it pay you money, but it helps the creativity because you get to look at it, you get to go into the real world, not in the film world, not looking at movies and making movies about movies, but making movies about real things. So I love that. So not only does it help your creativity, but it puts money in your pocket. So it's a real struggle. You have to love it. If you're in it, like my old film school professor used to say, if you're in it to make money, you might as well just go to dental school. Because, not many people in the independent sphere end up making a boatload of money. And it takes 10 years to make your first feature. It might take 12 years to make your next feature. So it's all about sort of cobbling things together, being financially smart, being financially literate, which I don't think 99% of Americans are financially illiterate. That's like a huge thing. So, but being successful and earning a living off of doing it, you have to make like these massive compromises in how you spend your money, where you live, whether you have children or not.
Family, yep.
Because I'm telling you, I'm in a Secret Ladies director group, and there's only one of us that has kids, and none of the other ones are planning to have kids. So it's just like it is. These are things that people don't tell you about when you're when they're trying to get you to make films.
One of the things you mentioned, grants. You've been very successful with getting grants.
I've been more successful at getting rejected from there.
But for every no, you get a yes. And
Not everyone.
No.
Maybe for every 10.
Yeah.
but-
Okay.
But I know that you have received grants
yeah,
for some of your
yeah.
work. And Lizzie, you received a grant, a Create Louisiana grant for your feature rockumentary, which we'll go into in a few minutes. And it is called
On va continue.
Thank you for saving me. So you obviously know how to create a template. I think we all struggle if you're doing documentaries or even narratives. What are some insights that you could share for these grants? Jazz and Heritage Foundation have grants. You both have been recipients for that. Share some of your insights and advice.
Dana, I feel you're more experienced in this probably. I've only ever received one grant ever. It was great.
The
But
Create Louisiana. Was that like 50?
it was 30.
Okay.
It was last year.
Yeah,
It was
okay,
30.
gotcha.
Great grant, by the way.
30,000, not $30.
30,000
Okay.
Yeah.
US dollars.
Sometimes I have to apply to the same grant over and over again. The main thing is to use the rubric that they give you. So that means using the same language that they use in the sort of application and stuff like that. Like just flip it into your the language that you use. Also, understand people don't want to read a ton. So really, I remember a famous writer once said that it's so much harder to write short than it is to write long. So write short is another thing. Take advantage of any of these sort of, if you have any questions, call us or email. Call and email them because they remember your name and you start to develop a friendly relationship with them. If they have a seminar or a webinar, do it. And if you can participate in it, whether by text or verbally or whatever, do it because they remember you. If you get rejected, write them a thank you letter. And that you're going to really try next time, and then try next time, and remind them that you tried the last time, and now you're trying again because they remember you and they track you. And this has been told to me by several grant makers. It's been told to me by several filmmakers who get big grants. So those are some of that's some of the advice I would give. I can't think of anything else right now, but yeah.
I didn't think
That's
about
great
that. Now, you
advice.
were rejected for your first Create Louisiana grant.
Yeah, I applied twice. Yeah, and the second time we got it. So I think I followed your advice without knowing I was, because we were already so connected to that community, luckily. But in the end, it is a relationship that helped me at least know what they were looking for and realize that the project we had fit like a glove. We also got very lucky in that it's a French culture film grant, and we have a documentary about a Louisiana French Cajun music band. So it's
But yet you refer to it as a rockumentary.
a rockumentary.
Why?
Because it's about rock music. It's a documentary.
I actually went to the premiere at the
did.
Britannia
It was very
Theater.
sweet.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It's about the Bayou Ramblers. Tell us a little bit. And how did you become involved with this project? You did narrative films, and all of a sudden,
Right.
poof, you have a documentary, a rockumentary.
Yeah. It was actually very serendipitous because all through my early career in film school and the couple years out of film school, I didn't really watch documentaries. I didn't really I wasn't drawn to them for some reason. But as I got a little bit older and started connecting with things that I loved in documentary, like food, I love food culture. I would start watching food documentaries and it kind of sucked me down this hole. But in 2016, we met the Lost Bayou Ramblers. They're this awesome band from Lafayette. They've been playing together for 2 decades. They won a Grammy in 2018. They're really just down to earth, super cool guys that kind of blend Cajun music, which is a very old traditional style that has like very like set rhythms, and they infuse it with like punk and rock and whatever the heck they want, really funk, and they're just so personable, and their main core value is keeping Louisiana French language alive, which I don't know how many listeners are probably all from Louisiana, but it's a very unique dialect of French that is basically only spoken at this point, in my mind, by grandparents. And we think of it as really old language, but they kind of take it and they make it cool. Like they make it something that anyone can listen to because it's like modern. So I really liked what they were doing. But we just met them and connected and started filming they did this really awesome show at the Music Box that we filmed that was just like breathtaking. And they were so like, they basically just opened up their world to us, and we had like a mutual trust. So we just started following them around, filming them, because Bruno always has a camera in his hand. That's my my producing partner. And we were like, maybe we can make a short, one day. And then it kind of just happened that Louis was like, come with us to the Grammys. Like, we'll all hang out together. We were going to New York anyways, weirdly. And while we were there, they won the Grammy. And then at the same time, a couple months later, we had applied for the Create Louisiana Film Grant, which is $30,000, which for our budget was just the right amount. And it really all happened at like the greatest time. And it really was like, we weren't looking for a story. It kind of just was with us, and we were there filming it, and it just happened. Like I said, very serendipitous, very, very easy process. I don't think I've ever had a film, much less a feature, work out that smoothly. And it was a lot of hard work. I mean, for documentaries, I think you're working with like 1/10 of the crew. I mean, the whole time was basically me and Bruno, or just Bruno. Towards the end, we brought in a couple people to help on like big shows. We'd have an extra camera or two, or a sound guy came on after we finished post to help like get the music all straightened out and all that sound straightened out. But yeah.
But Lost Bayou Ramblers, by the way, fantastic music.
They're so
and
great.
So under the radar, like nobody knows much about them. Mostly like New Orleans music in general, or Louisiana music in general. But their shows are, excuse my French, kick ass.
Super
I don't know if that's a
kick-ass.
French word, but they are awesome. But talk to that point just a little bit further about the distinction between the grants and the documentaries towards what you're doing now, which you're trying to do a commercialized project with Easy Does It. So talk just a little bit about the difference in fundraising and trying to get that movie off the ground versus your doc.
Yeah, they were actually like kind of the perfect first films for us, and they both started in 2016. Like our first shoot date for both was in 2016. We were looking for funding around the same time, so I got to see both films kind of grow up side by side, and they both have different paths altogether. With Easy Does It, it was a bigger budget, as narratives usually are, and we funded through investors, which sometimes documentaries are, but documentaries have way more opportunities for grants and donations and things like that. We also did a Kickstarter for both, which were very different, because a narrative that no one's ever heard about from filmmakers no one's ever heard about will speak to itself differently than basically a documentary that has a built-in audience, because the Ramblers have fans. So the funding was totally different. With one, we had grants and donations through Kickstarter, no equity. The other one was basically like a traditionally funded private equity film. And how we're selling them is different. Like I mentioned earlier, for En Va Continuer, the documentary, I tried to find a sales agent, get a huge premiere festival, and then go with festivals all over the world route. But in the end, we were like, we know the audience. The audience is super loyal. Like, there's very dense pockets of people that enjoy this film. How do we get it to them directly? So we're kind of going the self-distribution route there. And for Easy Does It, which we are in like final stages of post, basically working on our color only at this point, we're starting to pursue the sales and distribution route for that film, and are finding more luck and more of a path by going the like kind of traditional way. And we're entering into festivals and looking for our premiere festival to kind of launch our festival run, and hopefully be put into, kind of the traditional distribution sphere there. It's still a question mark, because it's always a question mark until it happens. But it was really interesting to see that those two different films kind of made with sort of the same people, like, some of the similar producers, all the people that were on Envol overlapped onto Easy Does It. So it was a good growing experience for both.
And excited to see Easy Does It too.
Me too.
I saw a little bit of footage early on, and I was very, very pleased. So
Oh yeah, it's gotten a lot better.
yeah, I can't wait.
promise.
Can't wait.
And we can't finish this podcast without talking about Locked.
I really
Daneeta.
love your short, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I saw it
Thanks.
at the women's.
Oh, yeah,
women's
that at
International
our club?
Women's.
Oh, I love that.
We all
yeah.
had
So great.
films that particular
yeah.
evening. But here you do narratives, you cross the line with hybrid films, and then you have this environmental film that has a definite point of view. And how did you go that route? And it's an amazing film. Talk about how you all of a sudden have become an environmental
I became
filmmaker.
radicalized in 2016 by the NOLA Indivisibles. It's a national organization, but there are local chapters. And our chapter is the St. Claude chapter, and we're all a bunch of artists. So we were all trying to figure out what the hell we were going to do to resist. And so we did all kinds of arty-farty things. And then I was also sounding off on Facebook about this lock project because the Army Corps of Engineers wants to blow up the Industrial Canal lock, which, as you know, is in the middle of the 9th Ward, and which is where I live. So I started yelling about it on Facebook, and then Darcy McKinnon of Novak got in touch and said, we're doing this series of films called Post Coastal, which is all about, us being a coastal city. Do you want to do something? And so we started doing research on it. It's a fascinating 100-year history about how the powers that be back in the day decided that they were going to dig this industrial canal to connect the river to the lake for a shortcut. And they said at the time, oh, nobody lives down there, but there were actually 5,000 immigrants and people of color that lived there. So anyway, I made the film because I was pissed off, but it's not the sort of traditional, it's not a tradition, my films, Victoria, it's not, you watch it and you're like, this isn't an Electric Zoo film. It's very traditional documentary, one point of view, one guy talking in a camera, just basically given the history of the lock and why we need to resist this project. And we made it for the activists to sort of take. And so that's an interesting distribution thing as well, because we just bought the license for the footage and we're like, here you go, you guys use it how you want it. And so they've been like taking it all over the city and the state. Sometimes I don't even go to the screenings, and they just like screen the film and then they do this PowerPoint presentation at the end, and it's just giving people all this information. So, but that wasn't the last thing. So like I said, I got radicalized. So this morning I've already written 3 letters. Like before I came here, I wrote 3 letters to my senators, to my congresspeople, and what was the other thing? Oh, I called on Friday 311 because I open the Guardian every morning and I'm outraged. This is something I did when I lived in London, and now I'm like, why don't I do that again? And so I open the Guardian every morning and I'm outraged, and I have to do something about it. So now it's starting to seep really into all of my art, and it seeped like that's why we're making Homeland Wetland, because I still have so much anger around how we ourselves have abused our homeland wetland, and the entire country has abused our homeland wetland. And so I have so much anger around that I have to make something to get it out. And maybe that is not the way to make films, but that's just the way that I make films.
Through passion.
Films are art, they're passion, and at the end of the day, regardless of what we're creating, we're storytellers.
Continue.
Yeah, I make propaganda for our side. Let me say that again. I make propaganda for our side.
How can individuals see your film or reach out to you and your company and stay connected?
We have a Facebook page for Locked, which is at NOLA Lock Doc, NOLALOCK DOC. You can search for it on the internet. You can see the film on the Vimeo page, on our Vimeo page, on the Facebook. All you have to do is just search for Google Industrial Canal.
And what about some of your other works and Facebook pages?
Yeah, so you can see work on our website, which we're working on right now, but please go and give us feedback. It's www.electriczoo.com. That's ELEKTRIKZOO.com. We use the K's because the C's were already taken back in 2000 when we bought the domain, and now we're stuck with it. what?
And Lizzie, what about you? And I cannot wait for your premiere later on this year. I'm sure I will be there. How can people reach out to you, Worklight, and your work?
Yeah. So my production company's name's Worklight Pictures. We have, the usual suspects, Facebook, Instagram, a website. You can see a lot of our commercial and shorts and sneak peeks of both of our features there. Easy Does It and On Va Continue both also have designated Instagram and Facebook pages and websites for both. Online is really the way to do it. We do a lot of interfacing through Instagram, which I feel like is the kind of perfect social media thing for filmmakers. So you can follow us there. We will be releasing both of our films this year, but neither have a date confirmed. We're keeping that under wraps for now, but if you follow us there, you'll definitely hear about it. And hopefully the New Orleans Film Fest will host at least one of them, if not both of those films.
Hope to see it there as well.
Can I throw in one thing
Go right
really
ahead.
quickly for 30 seconds? Or maybe 45 seconds. Another way of generating funds is throwing events. I found it was helpful to me in addition to crowdsourcing. Lizzie, you guys threw several events for Easy Does It. So do you think that is a good way to generate funding as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to the networking thing where you just kind of get to meet people. And if someone's willing to come to an event about your film, they either care about you or they care about the film. And either way, you can engage with them. And it's an easier, and a little bit of food and alcohol to keep it flowing always works. And we definitely found that to be the case with our documentary, being that it's about a band. We can go to their shows or invite them to come to a premiere or whatever. And there's kind of just this natural little community that forms. I think events, they take a lot of planning, but they have a really good payoff. They're like a little mini film, you know what I mean? You kind of have to mini produce them. They take a little mini budget. You got to figure out all these things, but I found that they are very good. And just to let people know that you're a thing, you know what I mean? That you exist, that you aren't like a film that's already been made, you're a film that is being made. Here are the people doing it.
Have you thrown an event yet, Daneeta?
I have thrown events in the past, and I have done I haven't done a Kickstarter in the past, but I did before Kickstarter was around. I did the thing where I went to all my friends and asked for $500 to make my first feature.
The first crowdfunding.
Yes,
campaign.
the first, exactly, the networking. But I agree with Lizzie that it's another mini film, so you're sort of producing that as it is with Kickstarter as well. And so we're constantly trying to find producers to partner with because we're directors. I produce our stuff. I don't produce for other people because it's too dang hard.
But one thing you could do, you have some films that are very successful, that are doing well, and you're looking for funding for future films. Throw an event and show Locked and show another film, and you can raise some funding for your next one. And then you get people interested in you. And
I'm going to call you about that, Victoria.
Getting the word out.
I'm not going to tell all my secrets
Want
on
to produce
air,
my event?
but I can share some at a later date. But it's a good way to really get the word out and get you, because people, one thing, we go to, you guys both support Novak, as I do, and you,
absolutely.
Jason. And we go every place we can, and we listen throughout these workshops. And there's always these ideas that stick in our head. And I'll never forget, at Sync Up one year, there were some producers there. And they said, when you come and present your ideas to us or to your films, yeah, we want to know about your films, but we want to know about you, and be able to portray yourselves as both of you are doing today very well, in my opinion, but they need to know about you. So, to close it out.
Well, I want to actually speak on that for a second, because I absolutely 100% agree with you. People invest in people. All right? The project has a lot to do with it, but they are going to invest in you as a person, and they're going to invest in their belief in how you can accomplish this goal and the story that they feel that you can tell. So as much as you want to put all the time into the investment stack, you want to put all the time into the budget, we all know those things are going to probably have some anonymity and change a bit throughout the course of the growth of whatever it is that you're trying to produce, but it's you that they're investing in. I know this. I do this as well when I'm investing in certain things. People invest in me in certain things. It's just how we all need to present and hold ourselves accountable for the projects that we want to accomplish. And so it goes back to networking. I feel like every podcast we've had, that needs to be the theme, because it is. It's all about networking and finding the right people that you not only connect with so that you can work together by motivating the stories that you want to tell, but also networking in the fact that you're trying to raise money so that you can tell these stories. And so those are the people that you want to try to find.
Can I just say one more thing about that? That it is definitely who you know, but the thing is you don't have to know the people that you think you need to know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to know big stars or big this or big that. You just need to find your group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I think that the term networking sometimes it makes it feel like it's like forced or like something like a to-do list kind of thing, but it's not. Like, networking is just basically forming mini friendships or max friendships, because you're right. I think that when people trust you, that the trust transcends the project and is actually in the person and the team. So yeah, I mean, and it's also fun to just like be able to share later, like to have positivity and people you can go to for advice. I mean, networking isn't like this thing that's like, okay, now I got to go meet 10 people at this event. It's just like, who do I connect with? Like, who can I have a conversation with? Like, it's super easy.
And also, one thing that I learned about networking from the masters of networking, the Japanese, is that it's not necessarily about, like you said, meeting 10 people that can help me. It's about meeting people, and if I think that person can help Jason, then I'm going to connect them with Jason. They don't necessarily have to be helping me. And I think that is just the most powerful thing. Because not only are you making a friend with them, you're making a friend with Jason, and you can feel good about this connection that you've made. So
I don't think enough people are as generous as they could be with their relationships. I am, and I think all of us at this table are.
There's enough for all of us. I truly do believe that there's enough work, there's enough, everybody can do their thing. There's enough. We don't have to be competitive or toxically competitive.
100% agree. And I feel like I could talk about this for 2 more hours, and I think we need to decide on whether or not we want to extend the program, because I love talking about this so much, but we are at about our time. And so this was fantastic. Thank both of you for being here today. We really appreciate it.
We do. Women in film, there's less than 30% of women directors and women producers and women writers. There's more in the independent filmmaking world, but still it's 25%, 23%. But women directors, women producers hire other women. So I think we all need to support ourselves. Men too. We love support from men as well as women.
I get it.
But I think just be kind to one another. Be supportive. Keep those daggers at home. Don't do anything that we wouldn't want ourselves to have that done to us. But this has been a great show. I think you're both remarkable women. You're talented. You're successful, and you're doing what you love. Any closing comments, Daneeta and Lizzie?
Thanks to y'all for having us, and it's really nice to finally get to like meet you in person, and best of luck with all your projects with Homeland, Wetland.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Same here. And I guess one thing is like, if you love it, don't give up, right? I mean, there are dark days, but if you love it, don't give up. That's my last thing.
I have like a motto that like keeps me from, in those dark days, from really freaking out. And it's always like, well, I could be sitting at a desk right now.
Oh my gosh, I have one of those. I could be holding a golf sign in Oxford Circus. That is
Look, I had a job selling food on my feet at various stores.
Because
I bet there were good stories, though. Good stories, have you?
Well, I tried about humanity.
I tried to look them, but you do what you have to do. But
my thing is everybody needs to be a waiter, because you learn a lot about humanity
I
as
totally
a waiter.
agree.
Right.
You can tell. I can look at a person and be like, you were never a waiter, were you? You don't have that sense of reality that you need.
It will help you network like we were talking
That's
about,
true.
and it'll
Yeah.
help you do exactly what you said, which is really kind of pick out the people that you know that you probably will have something in common or
Yes.
not in common with
Teaches
very
you
quickly.
patience, yeah.
But thank you all so much. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And thank you to our audience for listening and for tuning in. We are just loving this show all about Louisiana film. And if you have an idea that you might want us to discuss, hey, let us know. Right, Jason?
Please do let us know. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on all of the platforms, if you will. Check us out on YouTube and obviously on podcast. We look forward to you next time.